Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Escape to Nature. And we are starting off at Guyu Waterhole with a lovely dazzle of zebra who are coming down for a bit of a drink. My name is Ben, and I don't have a camera with me today. I have camera feeds, which is still a little bit unusual, still getting used to it, but it's fantastic to be back again. Looking forward to seeing what comes down to join us at the two waterholes between here and Juma. And of course, this is a live and interactive safari experience, which we cannot do without you and your assistance. So please don't forget to send us any questions or comments or anything else you'd like to know about. You can do that by downloading our app and registering. And if you are using the YouTube channel, of course, don't forget to subscribe so that we can keep you up to date in all the new great content that we are producing. But what a lovely way to start the day. Looks like a relatively clear skies there in Ukukoyu, as one would expect. A few light clouds in the background and a hive of activity as always, say with the waterhole being dominated at the moment by some zebra. But we've got some springboks going in for a paddle. I think there's one or two impalas making their way down to the water as well. I have had a good sort of look around and I haven't found anything else yet that's come to join us. We did have a little cameo from some elephants yesterday during Escape to Nature and some kudus. I've been scanning for jackals this morning, but no luck thus far. But I know they are notoriously difficult to see against the rocks and this soil, especially if they're just curled up somewhere. But lovely to see these animals quenching their thirst. Thank you, Ross. I guess it is another day with me, and I am indeed a man, so I cannot fault you for that. But no, it's lovely to be back. It really is. As I said yesterday, it's a bit of a strange one for me, uh, commentating, if that is the word that we must use, on camera feeds as opposed to being there in person. But this is the next best thing, I suppose. And having never been to Kuyu Waterhole or to Etosha itself, which is a bugbear of mine, but something I'm hoping to fix in the future. This will have to do for now. As I said yesterday, I have spent some time in Namibia. I've done Irindi, which is a private game reserve above or north of Windhoek. I've spent various trips down towards the Sossusvlei area and the Namib Narkluft Reserve, because it's the International Dark Sky Reserve, which very much appeals to me. And I spent a few weeks up in Damaraland as well, but never actually got to Etosha yet, which is a real shame, to be honest, and something I must fix in the future. I'm just trying to get a closer look on these impalas. You can also hear a Corhan or a bustard somewhere in the background, I think. We'll have to see if we can track it down. But birding on a camera feed is not easy, I discovered yesterday. Beyond Egyptian geese and hearing some double-banded sand grouse and things, it does get a little bit tricky. But let's enjoy this lovely, nice big herd of impala with a few intermittently scattered springbokkies. There we go, now we've got a better view where they've all arced themselves around that edge of the dam. So streamlined and sleek. Look at the way that fur is reflecting in the sunlight. It shines like a fresh track. Silky satin coat that these impalas have. A sign of them being in good condition. And you can see there has been some rain. There's a little bit of grass growing around the edges. We have had a very wet last couple of months, certainly in South Africa. The animals are indeed happy. Queen, yes, Springboks also have a similar strategy in terms of their breeding um, behavior as the impalas do. I don't want to give you a specific date because obviously it differs between areas, but generally speaking, it happens at the end of the summer months because has been plenty of food, plenty of good fodder for them to eat. They're all in very good condition, and that's the best time for all the males to test their strength. And then just like the impalas, they will lock horns, they will push, they will shove, they will establish dominance, and then they will hold a territory and hope that females are attracted to their territory. So it's a pretty much tried and tested method in nature that the biggest, strongest males will have access to the best territories. That does not come with some females. So take those zebras, for example. A dominant male is not territorial over an area of land. He is territorial over his mares. Whereas in the smaller antelope species like this, they will generally hold an area of land that doesn't necessarily come with any females included. But the idea is that the bigger, stronger rams will hold the best territories, and therefore, by default, those territories will attract females because they will gravitate towards those areas. They have food, they have shelter, they have water, and that will give that dominant male the best opportunities to mate. Obviously, springboks have to be a little bit more careful than impalas do when it comes to those ruts, just because of the shape of their horns. A little bit like kudus, they have become tangled up before, which can obviously spell disaster for potentially both parties. I know there are stories of two springboks becoming entwined, and one of them having to sort of sit there and watch its competitor get slowly demolished by jackals because they were just completely locked together. If you ever go to Skukuza in the Kruger, you'll see there is a sort of a bronze cast statue there of two kudus with their horns locked as well, because with all those additional twists that the kudus have, sometimes they just get themselves into such a tangle that they are unable to separate themselves. And that can obviously be a danger. Predators have also learnt that noise. The clashing of horns can actually attract predators to an area and other males of the same species to an area as well, because that suggests that the protagonists are not paying very much attention to their surroundings. And it might be potentially an easy pickings for a predator, unless there have been various reports with other males coming up and sort of attacking the two that are already fighting, because it's a good opportunity to seize the advantage because the other two are distracted. So we like to think of the animal kingdom as slightly more moralistic than ours or our society, but they will always take the opportunity where they can. Nice to see a big herd of impala, actually. Yesterday we saw a sort of few here and there impalas coming down for a drink, but not such a big group as this. But look at all the zebras in the background there. The squatter hole is pumping this morning. We will keep looking around, and I learnt yesterday that we have to zoom out occasionally and just double check what's happening in the foreground, because we were watching some springbok having a drink yesterday, and I thought I'd see what else there. Zoomed out and found a herd of about 15 elephants having a drink that had gone unnoticed. I'd say the skill set for operating a dam cam feed is a little bit different from what I'm used to driving around in Madikwe or Djuma. And maybe one day I'll get the chance to experience Amakhala or Karika. I've heard some great things about it. It would be nice to go and spend some time in a different ecosystem with different flora and fauna, particularly from a bird life perspective, of course. I haven't got a lifer on my bird list for a long time now, certainly, but I need to travel to some new areas with birds being quite habitat specific and area specific at times. Lots of action. Katie, I'm actually trying to think of the correct answer for your question, because there's a bit of a difference between showing dominance towards a female versus showing dominance against another male. I think, with all due respect, sometimes the females just kind of accept that he is the main man, and those females have been stolen from other males. So when a young stallion does come of age, he doesn't get gifted females, he has to go and find them from somewhere. And that will either happen through emigration of from different groups, but more often than not, the stallion will fight another male and steal one or two of those females from his grasp. And then I think as far as I know, once the sort of the male has abducted, if we could say that, those females, then they are considered his. I have to be very careful how I say this. It sounds like a potentially dodgy topic to get into. But they are fairly respectful and they will sort of honor that position, unless they, of course, do get poached by another male who comes in who's bigger and stronger, and perhaps they decide he is better for them. Remember, it's all about genetic diversity. Males are chosen on the basis of either their territory or their social status or their ability to, not so much their ability, but their um, perceived ability to father good, strong, quality offspring. So we see it in birds, for example, all about sexual selection with mimicry and take the drongo, for example, been readily proven that drongos who are able to mimic multiple different other birds are more likely to have more success in terms of finding female receptive partners, because that ability to mimic other species is considered a benefit in sexual selection. But I'm hoping we get some more elephants to come down to drink. The Juma Dam Cam was very quiet yesterday. I did intermittently check it. I think it was probably still during the morning safari, but there was a beautiful gymnogene, African harrier hawk, that was hanging around on one of those dead trees close to where our brown-headed parrot's nest is. But I've been having a look this morning, but it seems to have vacated the area for now. I'm assuming these are Egyptian geese floating around in the water. Let's see if we can go in for a closer look. They must get a little bit annoyed having to share their waterholes. So many animals all day, every day. Whoa, sorry, for some reason we've zoomed in super close. Still getting used to these controls, you'll have to bear with me. Lovely views of our springbok there. This is the beautiful facial markings that they've got. Those white faces with that black slash. Almost looks like a mime. But definitely some Egyptian geese in the foreground. And yeah, lovely to be able to get up close and personal. The cameras these days are pretty amazing. Okay, we'll just go out a little bit just so we don't get any shake. If there's any wind, of course, the more zoomed in you are, the more that movement is accentuated. And I don't want to give you all motion sickness. Something I know all too well with my astrophotography. The more zoom you have, the more stable your tripod needs to be. The slightest little jiggle can ruin everything. A nice comparison there between the impalas and the springboks. Of course, don't forget in springboks, one of the big differences is both sexes have horns. And you'll find in a lot of the antelope species out in these open areas that you find in northern Namibia, because it is so open, the majority of species there, or specialist desert adapted species, both sexes will have horns, because the females need to defend themselves in the more heavily vegetated, low felt areas. Then, of course, stealth and hiding in amongst that vegetation is a very good method of keeping out of trouble. But there are not many places to hide up in areas like this, so important that females are able to protect themselves and to protect their youngsters. And we can sort of see that if you do look at the different species in the low felts as well. So take Kudus and Inyalas, which are species that specialize in thicker vegetation, where the females don't have horns, whereas things like wildebeest, which are more plains-dwelling animals, the females in those species do have horns. It's lovely to see the comparison between the springboks and the impalas there, and you can see the different shades in the coats, slightly paler for the springboks, just to help not absorb so much heat, and those much whiter bellies just to help reflect the heat from the ground, which is radiating up. You see those rocks there. Imagine those rocks get very, very warm, and they radiate a huge amount of heat up towards the bellies of the animals. So certainly benefits them by having nice broad white stomachs to reflect some of that heat away. This one looks like it's got a little bit of a pot belly. Unsurprisingly up there, because springboks, Thamersbok, well adapted, do not have to drink very often at all. Lots and lots of adaptations. We discussed a lot of them yesterday, by being able to serve water, concentrated urine, being able to increase their own body temperatures, lots and lots of ways in which they deal with these very, very harsh conditions. Let's see what else we can find. Well, these ones have moved on for now. We're very much hoping that we're going to have a predator come and join us at some point, but of course this is not the ideal time of day for a predator to come and have a drink. With so many other animals in the area, I'm sure we should get plenty of warning if there was something untoward approaching. Oh, we've got a kudu. A beautiful kudu bull coming down. Fantastic. I only saw a couple of them. Oh, look at those beautiful widespread horns. I only saw one little group of kudus yesterday in the 3 hours that I was watching the camera. Okay, let's hope these kudus come down and have a drink. Notoriously skittish animals, but obviously they've had to take a chance coming out into the open here. Come and have a drink, kudus. The one at the back's got beautiful wide set horns. Again, regional differences. Generally speaking, or of course there are exceptions to every rule, kudus in the Far East have narrower horns as an adaptation for that thicker vegetation. Again, you don't want to be walking through thick bush with those massive horns. They get stuck on everything. It's hard enough as it is. You'll see when a male kudu does walk through the bush, he will generally, particularly if he's moving quickly, he will have to put his chin up and almost rest his horns against his back, just to avoid getting entangled in vegetation. Whereas out here, in these far more open environments, genetically speaking, the horns are wider. And certainly when I was up in Madikwe, we saw some beautiful kudu bulls there with huge widespread horns, reputed to be some of the largest in the world in that area in the northwest of South Africa. But this one at the front now is magnificent. Look how well balanced those horns are, how symmetrical they are. I'm a big fan of symmetry in my life, so this appeals to me. Some people would say it's because I'm a Virgo, but I'm not going to get into astrology just yet. See that lovely white flash across their sash, I should say, across their nose. And you can see kudus out in the open. taking their time to choose where to drink. But they should be fairly safe in the knowledge that there's plenty of other animals here to warn them of any approaching danger. Near higher than you would think, that's for sure. If you take a look at those little legs, but they've got very elasticated ligaments in there, and they can easily clear sort of a 2.5 to 3 meter fence from a standing start. One of nature's ultimate high jumpers, those, and the eland as well. Well known for having a spring in their step. So a good 3 meters for a big bull, which is pretty impressive if you think about it. As well as having long, springy legs, very important for predator avoidance. A wildebeest as well, it's all happening this morning. And a little baby zebra too. So that's about 5 species in that one shot. Got impala, springbok, zebra, blue wildebeest, and some kudus. It's a very small little zebra, this one on the right. Maybe it's just me, but these kudus look slightly less striped as well in terms of the kudus that I'm used to seeing more in the Kruger area. Perhaps again as a that is something to do with the lesser vegetation, having those disruptive markings that help them blend into the more tree and sort of high grasses that we have on the eastern side of the country. It may well make sense that these ones have less. Where's everybody looking off to the left or the east? Right, I don't think it's anything too untoward. This one's got his head down drinking again. Manly, not really, no. They sort of have the same ultimate effect, but just in a very different way. So the stripes on a kudu or that you see on an inyala are what we call disruptive markings. They are there to break up the outline of the animal because of the kudu's tendency to be in thicker vegetation. Remember that all plants generally grow vertically because they are growing up towards the sun. And if a kudu is feeling threatened, it will generally freeze in one spot. And if you're in thick vegetation and you are motionless, you are very hard to see, but a predator's eyes or our eyes are still sort of programmed to be able to recognize the outline of an animal. But by just having, and it's such a simplistic concept, but nature's had a lot of practice to make sure this works. But just by having those vertical lines, at a quick glance, those lines become plant stems or little tree trunks or columns of grasses. And so long as that animal remains still, they are almost impossible to see. It's quite normal to see one kudu, and then if you watch it for a while, you suddenly realize there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them there as they all start moving as they become a little bit more relaxed. Zebra stripes, on the other hand, well, there's lots of different theories as to why they have developed those stripes. It's certainly not to help them disappear into the undergrowth, but it does have that sort of dazzling effect on a predator. So when zebras feel threatened, they might get together as a group. Then it becomes very difficult for a predator to isolate an individual to chase. And then if they do start chasing, they get a little confused. Which one was I following? Was it this one? Was it this one? It just causes a little bit of struggling for words this morning. A little bit of confusion. And these animals run pretty quickly. So they don't need much of an opportunity to be able to escape the attentions of a predator. Hence why we call it a dazzle of zebra. But perhaps it's more also beneficial when they are running quickly because a predator, if they are chasing a zebra, has to sort of predict the trajectory of that prey animal to potentially, close the gap. And those stripes make it very, very difficult for a predator to gauge speed and specific direction. And that's been used by people as well. The US Navy have actually employed similar tactics and painted some of their battleships and things with varying black and white stripes. Because back in the day when submarines and U-boats were after them, and those people had to do mathematics on a bit of paper with a pencil as to the best trajectory to launch a torpedo. With all those stripes, it became a lot harder to sort of predict the motion of the ship on the surface. So that's an example of biomimicry. So yes, zebra stripes used for camouflage but in a different way, or more of a confusion tactic. But we also know that they are good for regulating heat, those stripes, with the black absorbing heat and the white reflecting it, creating a pressure gradient, which causes a sort of a draft across the skin to help cool them down. Although it has recently been shown that the most likely reason for those stripes is actually to stop biting flies like tsetse flies and horse flies and things. The flies do not like those black and white patterns. And they've done lots of experiments with horses, with coats, with different patterns. They've done it with checks and with stripes and things. And it's been very much shown that for whatever reason, flies do not like alighting on black and white stripes. Certainly some suggestions that it messes with their sort of visual cortex and they get a bit confused. They don't see it as a solid object. It confuses them and they would rather go somewhere else. Now, those are some of the main ones, obviously for identification as well with zebras, but that's mostly done through smell in the majority of animals. But there will be some visual recognition as well. Check, see we're not missing anything on the other side. There's more zebras coming down. No, haven't missed any elephants this time. That's good.
Wild Earth's mission is an expensive one, but we know that our live experience is important to so many people that cannot afford to pay for it. We have added a donate button to our website. By donating, you are directly helping us share our free nature experiences with the world. We want Wild Earth to reach children, budding conservationists, and the less fortunate. A little money goes a long way. You can make a difference to someone today.
Be interesting to try and figure out the motions of these animals. I'd love to know where they go, what's sort of behind that tree line, what it looks like. It is constantly coming and going all day. Strangely, I don't see any nests for those little grebes. It's not exactly nesting season at the moment, but they do make little floating nests, usually attached to vegetation and the like. But there doesn't seem to be any vegetation in this waterhole whatsoever, unsurprisingly. I wonder if they're just visiting from afar. See if he disappears from view again. Yes, they can go underwater for nearly a minute, believe it or not, those little birds, which is quite an impressive lung capacity. Right, well, we are going to keep an eye on what's happening here in Koyu and so in Juba. But it is not only I this morning for Escape to Nature, you'll be happy to know. We also have Andrew out. So let's send you over to Andrew to say hello.
Good day everybody, welcome again to Amakhala Game Reserve, and we are in the far western part of the game reserve, and we're going to be seeing if we can't find the three amigos this morning. Hopefully we do come right, but in the meantime we've got some black wildebeest just on top of the hill, and it makes for a good sighting. Good morning, my name is Andrew, welcome again, and I have Morgan over here behind the camera. Hope you're all doing very well today and excited to be with us in the bush. Yeah, we're going to be exploring the Amakhala Game Reserve. We've got a plan this morning. We're going to see if we can follow up on these three male cheetahs. They were sort of in this area, but now most of the safari trucks have gone back to camp, so it's up to us all alone in this area to try and find them, but I'm sure we won't struggle too much. Now we've got black wildebeest, quite a lot of them, and there's one blesbok. And just the way these black wildebeest are positioned, it makes me think that the cheetahs did come walking through here. And it's very smart for wildebeest just to get onto the higher ground. But they could also be warming up. They do seem fairly relaxed, don't they? Now, speaking of cold, yesterday I'm sure you saw how bundled up I was. It was icy cold yesterday. I really battled. Today is a lot warmer. Good morning, Sandra. Their tails blend in with the grass. It does, doesn't it? The grass is very pale at the moment because it is dry. So their tails definitely do camouflage quite well with the grass. I was just mentioning yesterday, it was so cold. We really battled yesterday. And when we finished our sunset safari, sort of my back was a little bit aching because of all the cold. But today it's a lot warmer and we're quite happy about that. And I believe that in the upcoming week, there's going to be some high temperatures up to 35 degrees. But those predictions do change. So we'll just see if the weatherman sticks to it. I can hear a Cape Batis in the far distance calling. It's a little bit of a gentle breeze at the moment. I'm hoping this afternoon doesn't bring those very strong winds like yesterday. Gio, hello to you. I would say the most common antelope found here on Amakhala would be probably the red hartebeest. They're quite common. We see them all over the place, really. And then also black wildebeest in certain parts of the reserve. They can be fairly common. Impala, there's quite a few of them as well. But it's just interesting because the impala antelope is actually the most successful antelope in Africa. And especially if you go further north, such as the Kruger National Park and the Sabi Sands Nature Reserve and so on, they are really plentiful up there. Oh, it looked like a African pipit just flew past those wildebeest over there. Now it's just moving off now. And the Bokmekiri is calling somewhere behind us. Frenna, morning, of course, yeah, especially here in Amakhala Game Reserve. Remember, there's the Amakhala Pride of Lions, and they will easily go for wildebeest and take them down. But wildebeest is a fairly large animal, and they're very strong animals. And between black and blue wildebeest, of all the antelopes, it's between black and blue wildebeest that release the most amount of testosterone, especially with the bulls. And therefore, they can be fairly aggressive and dangerous. And I know that I haven't seen it on Amakhala, but I've seen it on a different game reserve where a different species, the blue wildebeest, literally chased a cheetah until the cheetah disappeared. So the cheetah will go for calves, but for an adult like this, wow, it's really pushing the boundaries. Now, if a black wildebeest gets the upper hand on a cheetah, most definitely a black wildebeest will try and kill the cheetah. Oopsie, sorry about that. You can actually see these black wildebeest are quite close to one another, so they're clustering at the moment. So I think they probably did see cheetah this morning, probably a few hours ago, and they've calmed down quite a bit. But being elevated like this, it's also a good way for these black wildebeest to advertise themselves to maybe a bull that's got a territory around here. It's a good vantage point, and also the sun is going to reach the top of these hills first, so they can warm up quite nicely in the mornings. But with a few antelopes, we do see that they do enjoy elevated areas. Red hartebeest is common for that, and then also black wildebeest and blesbok. And then in areas where sesame occurs, they really enjoy climbing on top of high areas. Hello, Ellen. I'm glad you asked that question. There's actually quite a lot of things you can do in Amakhala. Bushwalks is definitely one of them. So there's a gentleman that is out here in Amakhala that's got all of his hours. He's fully qualified as a lead guide in trails, which is walking on foot. And it can be organized, most definitely. Depending how many guests go on a bushwalk, they might just go with the lead guide. But if there's more than a certain amount of guests, then a backup guide is required as well, and he walks behind the trail. The walks, depends. It can last up to 2.5, 3 hours long. But the intention for bushwalks is not to encounter all the hairy and scary. It's to have a really intimate time with nature and to talk about things that you might not see on the sides of the roads or things that aren't really covered during the game drives. And you do learn a lot on these bushwalks because you see so many things. You find skulls, you find flowers, you find all types of sign of the animals. A few of the lodges also do offer birding safaris. So if you're a bird watcher and you don't really want to see the mammals, you want to focus on birds. And there's a few of them that do come and check into this reserve. Yeah, you've got a jackal. Oh, there's a jackal running behind the wildebeest somewhere. Nice spot, Morgan. Yeah, so you can do bird drives, and I don't think you can do bird walks. Maybe it can be arranged. There's also horse trails, which is quite a nice thing to do. There's astronomy. And then when the river does start to flow again, then the reserve can start offering things like, the fishing, canoes, and then boat safaris, which I never really got a chance to do because when I started here, the river did dry up. And these wildebeest seem to be really warming up nicely and they're quite content. But I have no doubt, and I'm trying to identify where the bull is in this group. I don't see him just yet, but I have no doubt there will be a bull in that group over there. And these females will be within his territory. And as soon as the resources get a bit less out here due to them grazing, and the females will need to start moving and getting water, this is where they're going to leave the territorial bull's territory and go wandering off. And they might go into another male's territory. This is a good way that Mother Nature really does avoid the inbreeding side of things. Oh, there's a young calf there as well. So sort of just to the right of the center. Yeah, so there's the center. You see that bush there? That's more or less the center. Just a little bit to the right of that. So now you can see that it's quite vastly open here, and there's a lot of grassland out here in this western section of the reserve. And there is a little bit of water here. I haven't actually looked to see if there is water, but things are drying up at the moment. But this area that we're in now is great for eland antelope as well. A good few years ago I saw quite a few up here. The plain zebras, we also did come across some kudu, but they're more towards where the leaf material is and the localized thickets. You can't see them right now, but just behind us there are a few localized thickets. Look at that blesbok going right on top there, having a good look around. Makes a lot of sense for this blesbok to try and stay with the wildebeest as long as he can, because when these wildebeest do move away, that blesbok is going to be all by itself and very vulnerable. Hey there, Starbuck. Some animals do leave the herd. Typical one is zebra. Zebra do that a lot. So imagine these were zebras you were looking at, and there was a female that was ready to give birth. She wants her calf or her foal to imprint on her. So we'll literally just go to the side of the herd, give birth, and then the foal that is born learns the mother's behavior and smell and the stripe pattern, etc. But some animals also do this, some to a more higher degree, others to a much lesser degree. Antelopes like gemsbok, which we also drove past earlier on, but they're very nervous. They ran away from us quick. They give birth quite far away from the herd, and they actually hide their little calf inside a localized thicket for a period of time until such time as the horns start to grow a little bit and can be invited into the open where they are going to be vulnerable, and the calf will hopefully have little horns to try and defend itself. Wildebeest, on that matter, they give birth within the group, and sometimes several of them give birth not at the same time. They're not like impala that give birth when the first one gives birth to where the last female that is pregnant gives birth within the harem. It's a very, very short time. So before you know it, there's a whole lot of calves within the group. So wildebeest, they've got no problem giving birth within the group here. They need the protection and the safety in those high numbers. Jackie Jacana, that's a cool name. Black wildebeest, definitely one of them. And believe it or not, waterbuck. Yeah, waterbuck are formidable. If you're walking through the bush and you come across a waterbuck and you stumble across it, wow, it can be scary. And I know that Steve Falconbridge had an incident with a waterbuck within his career. It literally ran past him on foot. He's very lucky, because waterbuck, they can really do some damage to you if you corner that animal off. And the general rule is in the nature, if you want to sort of maintain the peace side of things, you've got to avoid separating groups of animals, and then also not to corner them off. You have to make sure that you have escape options and the animal has escape options. And when you see us doing our safaris and things like that, and we're approaching sightings, a lot of people might not see it, but within our mind and our brain, it's constantly looking for those escape options for ourselves, and then the animal must also be able to move away if it wants to. This becomes a second nature, muscle memory, if you will, with guides and naturalists and so on. Sometimes if we feel that we're going to corner an animal off and we have no other way of approaching an animal, then we just won't approach it. Now, another antelope that can be fairly dangerous, and it might not seem it, is a bushbuck. Bushbuck, they are not scared to defend themselves, and that's actually what I love about them. They want to survive. They want to see the day through. They've managed to attack leopard before and cause some damage. I know in farmlands, where domestic dogs might go for a walk and find bushbuck and corner it, bushbuck have killed many a dogs, and not small dogs, big dogs like ridgebacks and those sort of bigger breeds. What is that flying in the background? Is that a secretary bird? Looks like it. And most definitely is. Secretary bird just flew past us. Okay, I believe Ralph has also got some wildebeest that he wants to show you, so let's head off to Kariega Game Reserve.
Hello everybody and welcome to Escape to Nature, where I'm coming to you live from the Kariega Game Reserve, also in the Eastern Cape. And I've been kept company by this dominant blue wildebeest that has just been chilling out in a midden next to my vehicle. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and it's turning out to be a lovely day here at Kariega. The forecast is for not too much wind, and not that much in terms of cloud cover. It's a little bit of a, well, there's clouds, but it's very high lying clouds, and the sun's still coming through, so it's warming up quite nicely. And we're hearing a bokmakiri calling there, and that's a bokmakiri. You've got to lean into the kiri. Bokmakiri. So welcome aboard. Shame. So now he's tired of my company. He's going to move off, looks like, to one of his more favoured spots. But there is a blue blesbok in the spot that he likes lying. Quite a few birds calling, as I said, with the bokmakiri. Just heard a Knysna turako. See some of the blesbok off there in the background. And you'll see this guy now making his way on over towards where the blesbok also likes to lie. He's just over there. So it's the two old boys, one being a ram and one being a bull, blesbok and wildebeest. So let us know what you'd like to chat about, what any questions you may have, or any comments that you have. Send it through. I'd love to hear from you. Two unlikely friends, but two animals that do like being out in the open on the grassy plains. So Tino, who's 8, let's have a look at this blue wildebeest here. So you're saying, why does he have a bump on his back? That is just sort of where a lot of his muscles come together for the front legs. So it does make that little bump, and it's also the connection of its neck sort of to its back. So it can lift its head up, you see there? And then it drops it down as well as it walks. It's actually just there because of the extra muscles that they have on that part of its body. Thanks for your question and jumping on board with us. So this male now has gone over to his midden, which, like I said, is not too far from the Blesbok's midden, and you'll see there scratching. So he might also horn it. There we go. So he's marking it. He's got glands between his toes as well as between his horns, and he's got a gland below his eye as well on both sides. So he's marking the ground there and then lying in it as well. He also defecates and urinates on that spot. And because of all the hoofing and scratching that he does on the ground, it's normally an open patch. So, and with the dung that he drops there, it normally makes it quite soft for him too. So I think it's quite nice and comfortable. It also does then make it easy for him to transport his smell all around his territory. We've got one of those massive flying birds just coming over us, as the animals would think, I'm sure. So he's not too worried about this other male that's also, he's just gotten up. It was also in his midden because they're different species. But if that was another blue wildebeest, they would probably be chasing each other around now, having a bit of a fight. As this Blesbok might do, heading on over. He's spotted a group of Blesbok over there, and he might try and get some of these females to stay in his territory. Hear that Bokmakiri quite clearly now. There's a couple of them, they're calling across the plain here to each other.
Thanks to our wonderful Wild Earth explorers, Wild Earth Kids is back. Your monthly subscriptions have allowed us to relaunch Wild Earth Schools on a weekly basis, every Wednesday for the first hour of the Sunset Safari.
You guys bring a smile to my face every single day.
Sign your class up for a special virtual field trip to Africa, because touching the lives of the future protectors of our Earth truly matters.
can just see the ostrich moving in the bottom of the screen there. I saw a male and a female. There they both are. The red-fronted tinkerbirds, as always, calling off in the distance. The ostrich is a bit more active and it's warming up nicely now, so I'm sure they're going to really appreciate that and a lot more comfortable for them, as it is for me. So Melinda, ostriches feed on pretty much anything they come across. So I've seen them in the desert when there's absolutely no grass at all. And then you might find them actually being slightly more, feeding on more animal matter and little insects, etc. So, and I think they might even feed on some reptiles at those times as well. Because there's times when I've moved through Damaraland on foot and there is literally no grass to speak of. And so at those times, I think those ostriches survive on feeding on animal protein. They are omnivorous animals. When you find them in these particular parts, they will feed on more so plant matter because that's what's more available. But in the likes of the desert, Damaraland, Kokoland, and also down to the south towards Sossusvlei, in the Kalahari, in the all those arid areas, semi-arid areas. Sometimes there's periods when there's no grass or not much at all, and then they'll feed on little insects and stone crickets and those kind of things. You ever seen a stone cricket? When I say stone cricket, it's a cricket that looks like a stone. Sometimes you wouldn't even know that there's an insect there. You find them a lot in the rocky desert of the Kalahari and the Namib. I've never seen one in these parts. You get a lot more of the greener looking insects here, because in this part in the east, sort of towards the east coast, very, very green. So a lot of the animals have evolved to mimic the greenery, and that's the likes of the flat-necked chameleon and the locusts, etc. that we get here, crickets, all of that, all more of a green color. Whereas you go into the deserts and those semi-arid regions, you get more browns and blacks and reds. And so that's the kind of colors that the animals are as well. So we're speaking of here being in a subtropical zone, lots of greenery, but also chatting the mix between the east and the west. So maybe it's time to head on over to the west.
At Ukukoyu, and as you can see, we still have a plethora of animals coming down to enjoy this little oasis of sanctity here. We've got a whole bunch of zebras, a couple of gemsbok, you'll see some springboks milling around. But interesting to see the fact that all the gemsbok are arriving sort of en masse. You can see them milling around in the background there. First ones that we've really seen this morning. No sign of any elephants yet, unfortunately, but I hope some will come and join us at some point. But say, for me, I'm always very happy to see the gemsbok or the oryx Certainly animals that I don't get to see very often in the eastern side of the country, very, very occasionally. For me, I think they've just got such an interesting body shape and those rapier-like horns. There's just something very attractive about them. I just find them fascinating animals to watch and really rather beautiful. It's lovely to see so many zebras, really about that sort of dazzling perspective that they have and that way to confuse predators. And certainly if you were a predator, and you can imagine if all those zebras bunched up, it would be very, very difficult to discern an individual from the masses, which was very important in order to plan your hunting strategy. And of course, if we do see another little one, I don't see such a small one as we saw earlier this morning. No tiny ones there. What's always I found interesting about the zebras, we keep talking about all the different reasons that they may have stripes. We've covered some of them this morning already, but I think one of the things that really to be explains that it is very much a camouflage and a confusing process for predators is when you look at the baby zebras, even pretty much from the day they are born, they have such long legs, to the point that means their belly height is the same as the adults. And that means that those stripes on the adults help to camouflage the little ones. Because if you were a predator watching from a low perspective in the grass, checking out your quarry from a distance, it would be very, very easy to isolate the small one because you'd be able to see it below the belly line of all of the adults. But by having such long legs pretty much from the day they are born, this means they can disappear into that sort of shimmering mirage of stripes. And for me, that's quite a telltale reason for or explanation for those stripes. I know a lot of research is being done on zebra stripes and has been over the years. There are some papers done only a couple of years ago again about the flies and how confusing those stripes are to biting animals. But I think it's quite significant that the little ones have such long legs, and that really does benefit from those stripe patterns. That's just a Ben theory, of course, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But I think the longer you spend out here doing this and watching these animals, the more important it is to include your observations into those theories. We always say the longer you do this, you will always find that the animals don't seem to read the textbooks, and they do things or exhibit certain behaviors that are not necessarily documented. And that's part of the real enjoyment of what we do out here, is being able to almost go against the norm, which these animals, and certainly as an assessor for FOGASA, the Field Guide Association of South Africa, when we assess different levels. There's a little one, a little paddle. When you do your initial qualifications, the apprentice field guide qualification as it's known now, that's pretty much just a factual based thing. Obviously, there's a lot of impetus on your guiding skills, your ability to look after your guests, your empathy, your ethics, your communication skills, your hosting skills. But we expect an apprentice guide to be able to regurgitate some interesting facts and figures about most of the mammals and birds and things that we see out here. But once you get on and do the field guide and the professional field guide qualifications a little bit later on in your career, there's a lot more of a grayer area as an assessor. And I actually found them a lot more difficult to assess because you're not just ticking boxes. Did they know the gestation period of a zebra? Do they know the gestation period of an impala? What we look for more when we're doing those more advanced qualifications is for you to be able to bring in, or for a guide to be able to bring in, their experiences, their observations. And certainly from my perspective, I look forward to hearing unusual things or observations that people have seen during their career. That shows the hallmark of a good guide, someone who's gone out there and has observed and is confident enough to form new opinions based on what they have seen. Always say that if you don't see something new every time you're out in the bush, then you probably didn't look hard enough. particularly when it comes to the little things. Obviously, not something I can do here on the cameras, but as you know, I've been guiding for close to 20 years now, and whilst I'm still derive huge enjoyment from watching the lions and the elephants and the zebras and the impalas and everything else, I think for me the bigger fascination these days is in the macro world, the insects, the arthropods that we see. And it amazes me just how different they all are from each other and how many different strategies they have to deal with certain environmental things, their breeding habits, their feeding habits, all the different mouth parts, the different wing structures, the diversity of form and behavior, particularly in the arthropod world, is staggering. And I think it's so cool that we don't know as much, and we're still finding new species every year. There was a new spider found down in the east of South Africa in the sort of the Phinda region, a type of black button spider, or so one of the widow spiders, basically, which had never been recorded before. That was only a few years ago when I was out in Sossusvlei, at Sossusvlei Desert Lodge. They actually found a little, I can't remember if it was a skink, I think it was a gecko, but a little lizard that had been discovered there that hadn't been recorded anywhere else. And I still think it's incredible that in this day and age, with all the research and the reach that we have across the world, that we are still finding new species, not just because of genetic information that causes us to reclassify things, but completely different species that have gone under the radar. And that's another reason why it's so important to keep, these areas like the rainforest stable and go in and find all these new and fascinating animals and bugs and things that occur there. Yeah, I'm glad you think so. Yeah. So if there are any budding young guides out there, certainly, as I said, when you start, it's very much read and try and absorb the textbook and be able to reproduce it, but not in a manner that is just listing facts. It's one of my bugbears. I would much rather go out and hear 3 facts about an animal that are explained nicely in an entertaining manner that's easy to listen to, using real world examples and interesting analogies, than just listing a whole bunch of bullet points about an animal. Being a guide is all about being a storyteller, not just a lister of facts. So challenge yourself, go out, watch, read the book, then go and watch the animals and find things that go against the norm. And don't be afraid to point that out. I think certainly from a guest perspective, your job as a guide is to communicate with your guests and you form a rapport with your guests. And if you can give them your own personal experiences, that just helps build that relationship between you and your guests even better. Of course, there is no right or wrong. The nice thing about doing those more advanced assessments, yes, of course, one has to cover the basis. It doesn't mean that you can drive around at 50 or 60 kilometers an hour and run over lion cubs and things. I mean, that's not going to get you a pass. But certainly I look for people who can give me some unusual information, something a bit different, something based on personal experiences. So go out there and explore. Look at this beautiful dazzle of zebras we've got now. You can really see, if you had to do a quick head count there, you'd really be struggling to see how many animals are actually there. Helps some of them are lined up, but look at them as they're moving past in the background. If they were all moving like that en masse, it certainly would become very difficult to discern individuals. Splishing and splashing. It's so nice to see big groups of animals. That's one of the differences between the western side of the country and the eastern side of the country, and well, the area of southern Africa. If we do see zebras and things in the Kruger area, we generally see little groups. So stallion and his harem of 5, 6 mares that he has with him. But out in these areas, the animals tend to congregate together because of resources, and it's really special to see these big groups. I did work in Tanzania for a year, but not anywhere close to the Serengeti. I was actually right down in the southwestern corner in a little-known reserve called Katavi National Park, which borders onto the Selous and Ruaha, which are a bit more famous. But that was more sort of wooded, actually closer to the type of vegetation I expect to find in the Lowveld. But again, we didn't see huge numbers often. But I seem to remember one time, obviously it was an estimated head count, but we were driving on an area, I forget the proper name for it, but it was sort of translated as Cheetah Plains, basically, although ironically there were no cheetah in the park where I was. But we once came across a herd of, I estimated to be between 800 to 1,000 zebra all at once. And it really is incredible to see all those stripes moving as one. Is that little youngster having a drink of milk whilst Mum is drinking water, or is it just me? Hello, little one. But again, look at the size of the height of the shoulders, almost identical to the adult. So very difficult for a predator to discern that smaller one against the adult. And you can see that lovely triangular pattern on the adult shoulders. That's potentially where the little ones actually learn visually what their mother looks like, in addition to smell. Lovely to see. As I said it yesterday, it's strange for me to see animals wading out into the water like this. I mean, look at these springboks up to their bellies and up to their shoulders in the water. You very, very rarely see that from smaller antelope species like this out in the Lowveld because of the fear of crocodiles. Buffalo, of course, they don't really mind, although a crocodile can obviously take a buffalo as well. They will just all descend en masse into the water. You would never see a herd of impalas doing this in the Kruger area. And great for all the birds. You can see how often we'll be seeing big groups of animals coming down to drink. The geese and the grebes and things are often in close attendance, probably because as the animals are moving around and treading through the water, they're disturbing all those little arthropods at the base. And that enables them to feed more effectively. We get a lot of birds who will actually use that sort of quivering, stamping motion of their feet as they're walking. They sort of glide through the water, disturbing the sediment with their feet, disturbing little arthropods that are living down there. And then they will hoover up the excess that comes pouring out. So I suppose it's a little bit like the fork-tailed drongos following herds of elephants or larger herds of animals around. And benefiting from those grasshoppers and the moths and other things that are disturbed by those animals. This is the same principle. Manuel, yes, you can specialize, but you would have to get your basic qualifications, sort of blanket qualifications first. This is, of course, going through the FOGASA system, the Field Guide Association of South Africa, which is the most recognized way of doing it out here in South Africa. So the first qualification you would get would be your apprentice field guide qualification, so which is a little bit of everything. So if anybody is interested in doing that, it is very comprehensive, but it covers a lot of things in only a little bit of detail. So there are actually 17 modules that you are expected to study from and will be tested on and assessed on your knowledge. Obviously, you're not expected to talk about everything on one 3 or 4 hour assessment, but we do a sort of an oral interview process afterwards to fill in the gaps, and you're expected to do workbooks and the like. But once you have done that, then there are opportunities to specialize, and there are more and more sort of specialist qualifications that are becoming available. So you can be a specialist bird guide, you can be a specialist astronomy guide, you can get qualifications in wildflowers. Yes, you could be a specific you can get tracking qualifications. There's talk of potentially a snake-related qualification coming out soon. The problem is somebody actually has to sort of put the qualifications together, and it all needs to be regulated, and workbooks and manuals and exams and everything else have to be organized and set and written. So it does take a little bit of time. Someone actually has to do it. But if you do have a specific interest, the nice thing about FRGASA, and this is obviously what happened with the astronomy qualification, is that I approached them and said, look, I feel that there's a bit of a gap in the market. Maybe we can do something about it. And they said, well, go on then. So I always have the feeling they called my bluff to some extent. So I said, okay, I will. And a year or two later, we were able to introduce a specialist astronomy qualification, which was originally only going to be for guides who had attained that sort of top level of echelon of blanket guiding. But because there was sufficient interest, it's now available for anybody who has that apprentice field guide qualification can go on to do that. And so the same with birds and other qualifications. I'd certainly suggest you do as many of them as you can. Having a well-rounded knowledge is key. I always say knowledge is power. And I think everybody enjoys the tracking side of things. One of the most popular disciplines, and when I was working for the FRGASA training providers for both eco training and bushwise, normally the tracking courses, the tracking weeks that we did were some of the most popular throughout the entire course. There's something primitive, some sort of genetic thing that we have, I think, which we enjoy being able to read the tracks, to follow animals, to identify the tracks, to try and interpret things. And it's not just this is a lion track, this is an elephant track. When you do your tracking qualifications, you learn to identify everything from insect tracks to bird tracks and signs as well. So different types of dungs and scats and feeding signs, just evidence perhaps is a better word for it. And so actually in a couple of weeks' time, I'm heading off to one of the training providers to go and do some astronomy training with their students as well. More zebras coming down to drink. Let's enjoy these zebras for a little bit. And some swimming springbok in the foreground.
It's our birthday. Join us in celebrating our sweet 16th on the 27th of April. We will be playing our top 16 moments that we've shared together on Wild Earth, as well as all of your birthday messages on channel for the big day.
And a big thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wild Earth.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Tune in and get ready to blow out the candles with us. It's Wild Earth's sweetest birthday bash yet.
Yeah, let's just have a little scan further left, make sure we're not missing anything. Hopefully we get some more Gemsbok coming down to drink. I can see some in the background and say 1 or 2 coming in. It was nice to see those kudus earlier. We get 1 or 2 unusual visitors today. And to all the best floating around in the back. It seems to be, as usual, dominated by the springbok and the zebra for now. It's such an iconic animal, the springbok. Icon of our South African national rugby team, of course. Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you. No, you're never too old to become a field guide. As much as it pains me to say it, obviously from an employability perspective, if you become, well, how do I say this, not too mature, shall we say, you may find it a little bit more difficult for a a functioning tourist-based lodge to perhaps want to employ you. Although I'm not going to get into that now, but there is certainly nothing to stop you being a qualified guide and running your own safaris or offering your own trips into Kruger or whichever reserve is closer to you, or advertising specific trips that you yourself host. But there is no upper limit in order for you to study to become a guide, certainly. There is a lower limit. You have to, in South Africa at least, 21 is the minimum age in order to drive guests around in a vehicle because of what is called the PDP, which is a public driver's permit, which is almost like a taxi license that you need to have if you are going to be driving paying guests or driving people who are paying for your services. You have to have a PDP, which involves doing a police report and everything else. That has a minimum age attached to it of 21. But you can be a member of Fugaza and do your Fugaza qualifications from the age of 18, and even people younger than that, there are junior Fugaza programs that you can also attend. But there are a lot of young guides in the industry. It's a very popular thing for people to do, straight after varsity or college or whatever you want to call it, depending on where you're watching from. But you do get a lot of guides who will do that for a couple of years and then decide that, dare I say, they want to go and get a real job. Guiding is an incredible way to spend your time, but it does have some pitfalls as well. It's long hours. You're often in the middle of nowhere for long periods of time. It can play havoc with your social life and relationships and everything else. So it's very much a commitment to a lifestyle. But if you love it, you will always love it. That I can assure you. I don't think I held down a job for longer than about 2 years when I was growing up in England and working for the first sort of 7 or 8 years of my life. Not because I'm very proud to say because I was asked to leave, but I got bored. It wasn't inspiring, and you spend 2/3 of your life working, potentially 2/3 of your time between working and commuting. So I personally believe it's very important that you should love your job. Otherwise, you'll find it very frustrating. And certainly during my time working for training providers, we had some, I should say, mature students joining us, certainly. And of course, it's a good thing to do, even if you don't want to work as a guide, you can still come and attend the course and gain knowledge. I mean, that's what these courses are all about. Yes, it can be a stepping stone to a career, but if nothing else, it's just an incredible way to spend a few months of your life to attend one of these courses and learn some incredible things. And a lot of it is transferable as well. Obviously, knowing the gestation period of a springbok may be irrelevant to you if you've come across from the States or from somewhere in Europe, but learning about animals in general, about ethology, about animal behavior, about digestion, about how plants work, how geology influences things, how certain rock types are formed, processes within plants that is transferable to anywhere where there are rocks and plants and animals. I've always believed that the important thing is to understand the concept. If you understand the concept, you can apply that concept to whatever it is that you are looking at. A few more Rensbok appearing out of the background. Yes, come and have a drink, you beautiful antelopes, you. Oh, Lenny, that's a very good question, and one that I will have to try and see if I can find out for you, I'm afraid. As I said, I've never actually been to Etosha, so I would have to do some digging as to find out what the latest censuses were, but I will see what I can find out for you and let you know. I would think a lot is the simple answer, but I don't know the facts or the figures off the top of my head, I'm afraid. I'm going to have a quick look though, if I can. Okay, so I'm not sure how up to date these statistics are, but the first one that I've just found as a very quick look, so please don't quote me on anything. Potentially 13 to 15,000 zebra and about 15,000 springbok. That's of the plains zebra. So I've just found another one now that suggests around 20,000. So many thousands, I think is going to be my answer. Very difficult to know for sure, of course. Most of these things will be done, the most accurate way of doing it is the aerial counts through a little aeroplane or a helicopter. But of course, that does come at expense with the cost of aviation fuel and a pilot and everything else. So we can never say for sure, so these are always going to be rough estimates. But how nice is this to have such sheer number? It really does. It is unusual for me to see so many that at the front. There's a little goose who's just ducking its head under the water. I think it must be. Or two geese. Yes, just Egyptian geese. They just look funny with their heads under the water. I'm not quite sure what that was. Think of this little zebra as well. Looks like he doesn't have much patience. Come on, we've had a drink. Let's go. And the one on the right seems to be having a drink as well from Mum. Mum stocking up, and the little one having some milk. Funny with that little one on the left, all the other zebras facing to the left, and then the little one just having to be different, facing the opposite direction to everybody else. And hopefully all these Rensboks are going to come down for a drink. They're beginning to sort of congregate. Nobody's actually come in for a drink. I wonder if they're just waiting for their turn, waiting for the zebras to move on. Springbok bouncing out of the water. Must be so refreshing when you live in such a hot, dusty environment to just come and soak yourselves in one of these places. These Finnsbok are queuing up and nobody's willing to take the plunge, literally. I'm going to have a good scan around soon and see if we can maybe find something hiding in a shadow somewhere. Something a little bit different. There must be some other animals here, but it's just a constant stream. It's amazing. A couple of wildebeest coming down as well. As you can see, these blue wildebeest here, very different from the black wildebeest that Andrea was showing you earlier. Particularly with the shape of the horns, these ones go out from the skull and then curve up to the sky, whereas the black wildebeest horns come sort of forwards and loop around, almost like the handles of those old racing bikes. Zoom, have a look and see what else is there. Certainly, if there was a crocodile here, I'm sure he would be one of the happiest crocodiles of all time with all of this food coming down. But it wouldn't take the animals long to learn that there are potential dangers there. But yes, I see no reason why the croc wouldn't be able to survive there. Obviously, it's difficult to know what else is in there, because whilst we associate crocodiles taking wildebeests and other antelope species and those larger animals, that's what they're famed for, but that is not the norm. And if those big crocs up in the Mara River, for example, if they do take out a wildebeest or a zebra, I mean, they can easily go without food for months and months on end. So their general thing that sort of keeps them going is much smaller. They eat a lot of fish. Young crocodiles will eat a lot of insects as well, maybe the occasional bird, but birds are very, very difficult to catch, so really fish. So without knowing what the fish population is in here, it's hard to give you a definitive answer. But it's only those really large crocodiles that can take mammal prey. Well, yeah, anything sort of 2 or 3 meters above. Generally speaking, we say a crocodile less than 1 meter in length is going to be surviving predominantly on insects and arthropods, amphibians, reptiles, whereas things sort of 1 to 3 meters are going to be eating the majority of fish, and then beyond that, they will then start taking larger mammals, perhaps. We don't think of crocodiles as eating fish, but that is their staple diet, particularly catfish over here. And when I was up in Tanzania, we had a huge number of hippos and crocs there. And I remember taking some guests down to an area called Paradise Plains, where we often used to go down and have our sundowners there, watch the sunset, and marvel at the sheer number of hippos that were sort of packed in like sardines to this dam. And we were taking photos of hippos and things, trying to get the hippos yawning. And one of my guests got a nice photograph of the hippo yawning. When we actually zoomed in on the picture in the background, you could see a crocodile who was breaching the surface and had a catfish in his jaws. So it was nice to take photographs of these busy things and then look at your photos afterwards and see what you may have missed. Okay, well, since we're having a little bit of a lull and just enjoying the vistas here from Kui, it's just a little good time to remind you that from today, in fact, our school drives are back, which is something I've been a part of in the past, and they are so awesome to do, as the younger generation are going to inherit all of this from us. So that's hugely important that we educate them and aid in their enjoyment of protecting these areas. So every Wednesday, starting from today, the first hour of the Sunset Safari is dedicated to the kids show. And if you would like to be a part of that, if you are a teacher and you want to nominate your school to join us on one of these drives, you can do so by going to our website and registering at wildearth.tv/kids. But I always really enjoyed those. It's a good guiding skill, actually, to be able to change the manner in which you present the information, the words that you use, the explanations that you give for the younger generation. As I said before, it's all about communication skills, and you can have the best knowledge in the world, but if you can't communicate it to the level of the person that you are presenting to, it becomes a little irrelevant. So do join us for the Kids Drive. Always fun and exciting. Finally, our Flensbok have come in for a paddle and a drink, obviously waiting for all the zebras to move out of the way. Look at those spectacular markings. And they have such an interesting body shape as well. Very sleek yet strong and stocky, almost like a sort of parallelogram shape, a rhomboid shape, as opposed to a more traditional antelope shape. Certainly would not want to be on the receiving end of one of those horns, though. It is always difficult to sex Gemsbok without seeing the obvious, but the fact that these are quite long, thin horns suggests the majority are likely to be females. Males tend to have a slightly more of a bell shape, so the one, very difficult to explain which one I'm looking at, but there's one there that looks as if it's got slightly more bell-shaped horns. I think the one just going out of shot now. And they'll often carry their horns slightly lower, sort of, so their muzzle sort of pointed slightly higher up to the sky. And have slightly thicker horns as well to hopefully avoid them breaking in times of conflict, but hard to distinguish. These two really have just taken up position right in the centre of the dam. I would think potentially because the water there is maybe a little bit cleaner, because all the other animals wading around in the shallows will be disturbing a lot of sediment. And maybe that water is a little bit cleaner there. The animals do have a habit of defecating. Oh, I heard the zebra there. Potentially an alarm call, but you can see nobody else has really reacted to that. So just some communication going on. For what? I'm not exactly sure. See, none of the other zebras really reacted to that noise. But you will hear that if they are being harassed by a predator as well. Lines of horns. All the Flensburg seem to be coming to this central point. No idea why, but say my theory is that it's possibly better water, less marred from toilet habits of the other animals, like the zebras there on the periphery, and less sediment that's been stirred up. A tiny bit of elephant still. Right, it sounds like Andrew has been exploring the wilds over there and has got something to show us, so let's send you across to Andrew.
Okay, so at least 2 of the 3 male cheetahs are just laying on the right-hand side of this big bush over here, and they are flat as can be. Shame, I think they actually did quite a lot of walking last night. They walked all the way from the north, and the male cheetah. Did I say female? Did I say female, Nadine? Anyway, these are the 3 amigos, so they're the males, 2 of the 3 males that we can see here. Now, last night they did a lot of venturing around. They walked all the way from the north of the game reserve, and now they've gone a little bit south, so it's quite nice to see them on the main reserve again. We'll see how long they stick around here for, but they know exactly how to get to the northerns, which is quite nice, and anytime they want to go back, they will do it. Sorry about that, my bad, Nadine. Now, there are quite a number of day safaris at the moment. So we've got a few day safaris happening at the moment, and this is where people from outside, they'll come into the game reserve, they'll have a game drive which lasts about 3 hours, and then they'll have lunch and then head off back home wherever they come from. And there's quite a number of those day safaris at the moment. So we won't be able to stick around with them for too long, but still, we'll stay as long as we can. Shame, they are so flat at the moment, so well camouflaged over there. Yeah, I'm hoping they're going to lift their head, but they are really tired at the moment because you can see their heads are laying flat on the ground. One is sort of shivering there, I think fast asleep.
Shivering?
Yeah, what do you call that when you're sleeping and you have those involuntary movements of your muscles? Dreaming, there we go. You have it from Morgan now.
Chasing rabbits.
Paul, thanks a lot. You're welcome. It's been quite a mission to find them. We never found them. One of the day safaris went out. We almost took this road, but we didn't. We ended up going down to the windmill, hoping that they would have drunk water over there, which they passed through there. I don't think there was any water there. And we were expecting to find them on one of the boundaries. So we spent a bit of time scanning with our binoculars, looking for any movement. And then Obut, he came along, found them, and left a marker on the road for us. And we'll often do this in game reserves just as a marker, just so you know where exactly the animal is. Just leave a dry branch, or you leave if it's a dry area, you leave a green branch, something that is noticeable, and we use as an indicator, and that's how we got here.
Wild Earth family, we need you to become a Wild Earth explorer so we can continue bringing the magic of nature to people all over the world who can't afford to pay. Everyone deserves the right to enjoy nature. Please help us make a difference by paying a small monthly amount. Join us in giving back to our planet by supporting this worthy cause. Let's forge a special connection between people and nature, inspiring conservation efforts worldwide.
Now, what's interesting is in this area, of course, myself and Morgan, we were looking for them this morning. So we've been weaving through a lot of the roads out here, and we found lots of animals that are, that can be hunted by these cheetah. There's springbuck and red hartebeest, there's a blesbuck, there's a wildebeest calf. So who knows, in the next few days, maybe even today, you never know, perhaps these cheetahs are going to catch something. And they've been very successful over the last few months that they have been on Namakala, catching all sorts of big animals as well as small animals. Hello, Jamie. There are actually jackal, they follow cheetah quite a bit, especially when cheetahs are walking and it seems like they're hunting. Then you might find that an opportunistic jackal that's around just might see them and just tag on from a little bit behind, and in the event that the cheetahs do catch something, then the jackal just sits nearby. Oh, there we go, just one of the heads just got up now. It's amazing how in tune they are to the environment, because I just heard a crow squawking, and that's when this cheetah lifted its head and woke up. I think if brown hyena were more frequent on this game reserve, there's absolutely no understanding of how many there are on Amakhala, because they are very elusive, secretive animals, but we know that the numbers are very low. They would also probably follow cheetah to a degree. And then of course, if lions ever pick up the scent of cheetah, they'll immediately follow, as if they're hunting. And they would stalk a cheetah like they would stalk a impala, if you will. And if they catch the cheetah, they don't feed on it, they just eliminate their competition. But currently, the pride of lions, they're not close from here, so these cheetahs are quite safe in this area for now. Oh, Mike, it's all in variables. It depends on them. It depends how hot the day is. It depends how much they've eaten, how tired they are, how far they've walked previously, the previous night or morning. So it's all in variables. But they don't sleep anything like lions do. Lions, if they're full and in good condition and they're not keen to move too far, they can sleep for a long time, up to 18 hours. Cheetahs, not that long. So you'll probably find this afternoon they might still be here. But yeah, they sleep on a good sleep with a full belly on a hot day. You're looking at about 10, 12 hours. But the trick with cheetah is to stay alive. They have to keep moving. And if they feel that there's any competition around them, then make no mistake, they will get up and they'll start moving around. But now their main competition is actually, it's going to be lions, because lions poses a very, very big threat with cheetah. And so, what we normally notice is with established cheetah on a game reserve that knows the environment very well, like these guys are getting towards, then if lions are in the eastern parts, then you find that cheetahs, they are in the opposite part of the reserve completely. And that's how they avoid them. And also, cheetahs being day active animals, they're very active during the day, whereas lions are active at night. So theoretically, the lions will be moving when the cheetahs are sleeping and hiding, and vice versa. When the lion is sleeping, this is the time when cheetahs take that opportunity to walk around. But there's also exceptions to the rules. I've noticed cheetahs in the past that I've worked with. Some of them, they walk around at night, and they're quite successful at hunting at night. Things like full moon. Day active animals might walk around on full moon, like cheetah, wild dogs, even warthog. Believe it or not, I've seen a warthog on full moon, 8 o'clock at night, when it should have been in the burrow. Now, when there's a full moon, there's a lot of light in the bush. And it's, in a sense, nature's spotlight. Ella, age 11. It's so nice to hear from you, Ella. Ella, each cheetah in the world is going to be completely unique in the spot pattern. So you're not going to find great similarities. So they're not going to inherit spot patterns. They're going to have a total unique spot pattern all by themselves, which is quite a nice tool for us as naturalists and safari guides in the reserve, is that you can learn to identify cheetah not only by the way they behave, but also by their spot pattern. It's much like your fingerprint, Ella. Take a look at your fingers. Your fingerprint, there's nobody on this earth that has got the same fingerprint as you. That's what makes you very unique. Now these cheetahs have chosen quite a nice place to rest, not only because there's a bit of shade there, but they're right up against a whole bunch of bushes there. So they've got a bit of cover. Now, while you're watching, just something I want to bring up. Don't forget about the Flora Fest, which is going to be happening from the 13th of April to the 15th of April. So it's a whole 2 days. And what this is each afternoon, Steve will do a medicinal plant preparation. The medicine man. That's going to be pretty cool, isn't it? And this is all in celebration of International Plant Appreciation Day, which is on the 13th. And a day of mushrooms, which is on the day of the 16th. I think Rolf will enjoy that one. Oh, there we go. This one has lifted its head. What is it spotted in the distance there? It could be a jackal lurking around, or maybe a warthog. Whatever it was, this cheetah has got eyes on it. Ah, but their eyesight is incredible. I wish I could have the eyesight of a cheetah just for a couple of hours. But as I was saying earlier on, it's cheetahs need to be quite vigilant where they're going to rest, because they don't want to just be out of sight of lions and jackals and hyenas and things like that, but also out of sight of the birds. Even a small little bird like a nediki, if it flies over here and it sees these cheetah, it'll sit in the bush right above them and clicker away and give all these alarm calls, and that could attract anything that hears those alarm calls. It's the exact same thing with trails rangers who do a lot of walking on foot. Often the birds can give you away. So if you're approaching an elephant and you're trying to hide, and just gently sneak up and just try to get a view, if a bird sees you and gives alarm calls, the elephant is probably going to hear you coming or know that you're coming. We naturally try and avoid the birds when doing bushwalks. I've always found it incredible how they are able to camouflage so well. And, you often find that when they lay flat like this, because they are slender-bodied animals, they almost are at the same level as the ground, which is very good for them, because if they lay in the grass and they lay totally flat, then it's very difficult to swat them. Okay, now there are a couple of day safari vehicles within this vicinity. They're quite keen to come and have a look here. So any moment now, we will need to make a space and let the next chaps come in and show their guest cheetah. How lucky are they to come here for a day safari and they're able to see cheetah on the first, couple of hours of their safari. Just brilliant. Okay, we're going to make a space and let the next guides come in and have a look. In the meantime, let's go over to Ralph and see what he's up to.
Well, I've got it's not the entire breeding herd of buffalo, but quite a big portion of them. I don't know where the rest of them are, but they've come to join me. So they're keeping me company, and it's pretty awesome because they've had a small mud wallow. It's not extremely hot. I think that's why they haven't gone for a full-on wallow, but they're just hanging here next to the wallow and next to me. So I'm just going to be a little bit quiet and we can actually hear them feeding. Riley, thanks for your comment. I really have to agree with you. It's awesome. Now, it's nice to view them from the back of a vehicle, and it's pretty awesome, but it's a different feeling when you're on foot, completely. So I do feel that I've got two different relationships with buffalo. A lovely one on the vehicle, but a not so lovely one when you're on foot, because they can be pretty gnarly when you're out there on their own terrain without the safety and comfort of a vehicle. But I'll take this. These two little youngsters also having a bit of downtime. I'm glad that they've decided to have a bit of a rest here next to me as well. You can see some mud on them. They were horning it. I like it when their tails stick to their sides from the mud. The old stare down. It's not the kind of gnarly look that you get when you're on foot. And then their heads are up and they're looking down the end of their nose. It's a really relaxed look that they've got here. Not too worried about me. As we were chatting about yesterday, about chewing the cud, ruminating, now you can see it. Terry, if I was a buffalo for a day, I would go for a full-on mud wallow spa session. Most definitely, that's what I'd do, because you can see just the pure pleasure that they have when they go and lie in the mud. Today it's not really hot enough, I think, for them to do that, but you can see that they want to, because they're here next to the wallow itself. There's a little bit of interaction with a couple of them here. And the sound that you might hear off in the distance, it's not any kind of vehicle, it is in fact a generator at the lodge because of the phenomenon known as load shedding. Very interesting phenomenon that will stick to the wildlife. Can seem very slow moving buffalo, but I tell you what, they can shift when they want to, so don't be fooled. Very gregarious, like social contact. African fish eagle calling in the distance. A pair of them. I do tend to need to be pretty quiet on the vehicle when the buffalo are close to me like this, because any loud noise or anything like that, and they do sort of take real notice in me, and it can make them not so relaxed. Oh, another one going down. Looks like that's them for the next couple of hours, I would say. Those real menacing horns. There's a bit of a younger one. His horn's still going straight up. No curl to them really yet.
We hope that when you watch Wild Earth, you will fall in love with nature. We know that our explorers share a passion for nature and want to make a difference. Wild Earth Schools is back. Sign up to be an explorer, and your subscription will help us reach the future conservationists of our planet. Invest in something that truly matters, encouraging children to care for our beautiful wild earth. Wild Earth Explorers, make a difference.
backwards and forwards wherever there's a little bit of action. That big bull, he seemed to be moving through those females. Now this little youngster's up. Righty, so this wonderful sighting of these Cape buffalo with all the greenery next to the mud wallow. I'm going to send you on up where there's no buffalo in the Great White Place.
Thanks, Ralph. Always nice to see some buffalo, but yes, no chance, I'm afraid, of any buffalo coming down for a drink here in Etosha. Excuse me. I've been holding thumbs and crossing fingers and toes for some elephants, but nothing has come down yet. But a relatively low elephant population in Etosha if you compare it to Kruger. 22,000 square kilometers of land in Etosha National Park, only about somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 elephants, so that's still a lot, don't get me wrong. Oh, there's a nice flock of probably sandgrouse. Is that sandgrouse? Let's have a look. Those little birds that we've seen. Let's see if we can get in a little bit closer. So there's a bit of a delay when I zoom in, so hopefully they'll still hang around. Difficult to know if they're still there or not. I still see things flitting. What have we got there? I think they're sandgrouse, and looking at them, they don't look big enough. I would have thought we would have seen them if they are sandgrouse, but of course Etosha well known for its double-banded and Namakwa sandgrouse. Oh, what are those? It's definitely not sandgrouse.
But lions, they don't come here these days.
Oh, difficult to see on my screen here, but some birds flitting around. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, nighttime.
If anybody can identify them for me, please feel free.
Is the lion, you see this species?
Some mysterious birds there. Not quite sure what those were, apologies. But say, not easy to do birding on a remote camera feed. There seems to be a bit of a lull. A lot of the animals have disappeared. Could that mean that there are some elephants approaching? They do tend to chase everything away from them. I'm hoping we do get to see some more elephants. Of course, the Etosha elephants are really magnificent, the tallest in the world, but also with very short tusks, possibly due to mineral deficiencies in the area. But those big bulls can reach a good 4 meters at the shoulder, which is, let's just say, very, very large. I know a lot of guides will say that the buffalo does sort of a little more fear and nervousness than any other animal out here, particularly on foot. But I would have to say that I've had limited problems with buffaloes during my trails guiding and walking career. The thing I'm most concerned about or vigilant of is elephant, certainly. I had one run-in with an elephant a few years ago, which has still probably been my closest encounter and one which I will never forget. In fact, it's the only time I've ever had to, or felt the need to, chamber around into the rifle. It was quite a harrowing moment in my career. Certainly it was with some students and we just walked around. But the short story is we literally just walked around the bush, and I was leading the walk. And if I'd have taken 3 more steps, I would have literally just walked into the back legs of this elephant. We never knew he was there. He never knew we were there.
Suppose I know there is no
And just to be met with pretty much an elephant kneecap, as it were,
problem.
was quite harrowing. Managed to get most people to safety around the other side of the bush, but obviously the elephant heard us and came to see what was going on. Thankfully, there was no aggression. He was as surprised as we were, but
That's why I don't know.
yeah, at our closest, we were probably only about 3 meters away. And it is a cliche, and I think I've probably told this story before at some point on my Wild Earth ventures, but I can still see every detail of that elephant's eyeball. We very much shared a moment. If I close my eyes, I can see his retina, I can see the colors of his eye. It really is a sort of not a life flashing before your eyes moment, but a real wake up call just to be careful, and you never know what might happen out there. Thankfully, as I said, he was a little bit more, or just as surprised as we were, and it was more a bit of a sort of a face-off than anything else. It was only actually after he started to leave that he lost his temper a little bit, and I watched him uproot a red bush willow tree, which is one of the heaviest trees. In fact, it's the heaviest or densest tree that we have out here. He pulled out a red bush willow, probably about the thickness of my thigh, and threw it in our general direction, which was, I wouldn't say terrifying, but it was again a reminder of just how powerful these animals are. And then thankfully he chose to leave us alone. And my backup, Gerard, who was with me, managed to get everybody to safety. And my role as the lead guide is to stay in that scenario and just ensure that the elephant is indeed moving off, which he was, and then he stopped. I probably put about 30 meters between me and him, and then stopped. And he still had his backside to me, and I just saw he lifted up his front leg and just left it dangling there, which is classic sort of elephant processing body language. He's just sort of saying, I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to keep going, or am I going to come back for another bite at the cherry? And I was sort of willing him to keep walking, but no, he decided to turn round and approach me again. But I'd managed to put myself behind a pretty substantial fallen knobthorn tree, so I felt quite comfortable. There was a nice barrier between us and him. That tree was probably about 10 meters in front of me, and as long as he stayed behind that tree, I knew he wouldn't have a problem. But I obviously was concerned that should he make the effort to climb over that trunk, then he was potentially had ill intentions. But I was confident he would stop there, and he did. But then a few seconds later, he decided to put one foot on that trunk and then the second foot, so he was towering above me even more so than normal. And I'd sort of made the decision that if he climbs over that log, then I didn't really have much choice. But thankfully, he just sort of looked at me from up on his perch there and huffed and puffed a little bit, turned around and wandered off, and I breathed a fairly substantial sigh of relief. Apologies that you're picking up some people talking in the background. We are actually very close to the lodge. Kikuyu has a rest camp there. It's the oldest one in Etosha. So there are people around, and of course these cameras are very sensitive to noise. Apologies for the conversation there that you can hear. Having a full-on conversation about something. But we have another huge herd of zebra coming down for a drink by the look of it.
Hey. 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 Hey.
Doesn't sound like a particularly exciting conversation, but hey, we will try not to eavesdrop, but it's difficult not to. Seems to be communicating more in grunts.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to see what happens with these zebras that are coming in for a drink. Let's send you back across to Ralph and his buffaloes.
Hey, hey.
So it sounds like there's lots of chitter chatter under that Okukuyu dam cam. Well, I've been there hundreds of times and I know for a fact that it can get quite noisy there with lots of excitement from tourists that when they come down to watch the animals at the waterhole. Sometimes it depends. People can be quite principle-like with the shh that comes with when people are making a noise, but there's other times when it is quite rowdy. But I can assure you that the animals, they literally take no notice at all. I know it's not great for your viewing pleasure, but being at that waterhole so many times, kids crying, people shouting at each other, and the animals don't even flinch. I think they've just become so used to it that they don't have a problem with it at all. So if you were wondering about that, well, let me set your mind at ease, because I've been there in person. I was there, what was it? It's over a month ago, actually, and I was one of the people making a noise, but I was shouting at the camera, saying hello. So Ali, there is a decent sized population of buffalo in the Eastern Cape, and there's also a lot of private farmers of them as well, because these particular buffalo are naturally disease-free. So there was a big boom in the price of disease-free buffalo in the last 10 years or so. It has subsequently dropped, but as a result of the big boom in the price, there was a massive increase in the farming of them. So there's actually an excess number of buffalo in the Eastern Cape. And I know on Amakhala they actually kept them isolated from the main reserve, their population of buffalo, because they were so valuable, they didn't want any of the lions eating them. And subsequently the price dropped, and then they actually opened that gate under the N2, the road where it runs from the Northern Territories to the main reserve, and they let the buffalo through so that they could be part of the main reserve and be, and allow them to be part of the game drives, etc. But prior to that, they actually kept them isolated in the Northern Territories. And when these private reserves, when they do farm animals like that, they may use it for funding a lot of the activities that need to take place on a private reserve, from fixing of fences, from paying staff. They could also sell some buffalo and maybe buy some other animals. It could allow them to get more predators because they'd be able to afford more prey species, etc. So a lot of the private reserves do have a breeding side to things. When I worked for Eco Training and I was the camp manager at Salati, they had a sable breeding project, and I think they still do, but that was a big part of the funding of that entire reserve, and that's why that pretty much the entire reserve was a protected wilderness area. There were some other activities of tourism, etc., but the major part of the economic value of the reserve was down to that sable breeding project. So here in the Eastern Cape, lots and lots of private reserves have got buffalo. On Addo Elephant National Park as well, there's lots of buffalo there too, and they're part of the original stock of the Addo buffalo population. And a lot of the buffalo that probably here as well, I'm not quite sure on the origins of these buffalo, but I would bet on that they've probably bought some of the original buffalo that they introduced or reintroduced here from the Addo and the auctions that they would have had surplus buffalo that they would have sold off from there. So yes, there is a surplus of buffalo in the Eastern Cape, and that's great. And you always want to have animals that are worth money, because like when we studied wildlife management or conservation, We were always taught if it pays, it stays. And in the modern world, if you can't make money out of the animals that you have on your property, or wherever you are, you're going to lose them, and it's going to then end up being livestock or turn into agriculture. So it's very important to have a solid economic base from within boundaries and ethics. You need to make money out of your animals and out of the area that they live in. We can even use Kariega as an example, because during COVID there was no more tourists that came here, and all the tourist activities ceased. So all the employees suffered, a lot of layoffs, and if it continued for more than 2 years, we may have seen the selling off of these animals, potentially even of the land, and the primary use of the land could have changed completely. Luckily, borders have been opened and tourists have been allowed to return, bringing their money with them, and then now the staff have returned as a result, and everybody's getting paid once more. So it literally all comes down to money. So we always need to look at the best way of making money out of wildlife, so that we can expand the areas that they live in, because there's profits to be made. That's important. Gone is the fairy tale of everything must just live in the wild and be free. We need to make money out of them, otherwise it's not going to happen. And that's the sad reality, but it is ultimately the reality, so we need to work with it, and we need to try and find the best solutions within those parameters. And yeah, here in the Eastern Cape, luckily the borders have been reopened, but that's just an indication of how quickly things can change. Tourism brings in the most part here on Kariega, and without that, the functionality of this land could change. So long may tourism continue. Social dynamics going on here. I think that's a bull just pushing everybody around. I think it was Andrew talking about the giraffe yesterday, when they are ruminating or chewing the cud. They do go into what seems to be like a kind of trance. But I think it's just that arduous activity of having to chew the cud. It's quite monotonous, and so I would say it can make them quite sleepy. It's like me and reading. If I lie down and read a book, I'll get past the first page, and that's me, fast asleep. Terrible at movies as well. I tend to fall asleep if I sit down for long enough and don't move around, whether it's reading or watching a movie. I tend to hit some Z's. I'm that guy that snores in the cinema. No, I'm not a big snorer, but sitting down and sleeping does lead me to snore. It's generally followed by elbows in the ribs. Tinkerbirds are going off. How's Naturico calling now too? Seems like they're slowly starting to move off now. And very typical slow motion buffalo way. And I must tell you that I've also been told off in Etosha at the middle camp in Halali. But I went up to the Moringa waterhole. It's got a very big Moringa ovifolia. Very similar looking to a baobab tree. Looks like it's been planted upside down. But so they've got one of those next to the waterhole at Halali, and it's quite a long walk up to the viewing point over the waterhole. And I had pluckies on, as we call them, or flip-flops, or some may call them thongs, although yeah, we don't really call it that. But anyway, I had my flip-flops on and I flip-flopped all the way up to the waterhole, and as I arrived, all eyes were on me and I got told to shh. So yeah, even seasoned veteran guides can be told off next to the waterhole. Anyway, let's ask Andrew, has he ever been told off at a waterhole?
I've been told off quite a few times. I remember a few years ago I had some... Say again, Morgan? I said I can believe that. Yeah. Morgan says he can believe it. So I remember I had some guests one day, and we were on the vehicle, and I can't remember what I was talking about, and the guest obviously heard something in the bush, and all I heard was shh, and then her finger went to her mouth telling me, be quiet, just be quiet. So I can relate to you, Ralph. So we've got some scenery over here. We've stopped just between some of the bushes where it opens up a little bit, and we can see the top of that high dune, which is now vegetated over a long period of time. And there's so many different types of plants that we can see just from this view. And the most prolific, of course, is going to be things like the sweet thorn. They're everywhere on this game reserve, and definitely a good thing because it provides food for all those browsers, most especially giraffes. They absolutely love it. And because of it, this actually is a great area to sometimes come across giraffe because they're here for the food. There's also a bit of fynbos growing on the ground here, which is quite nice. A bit of the bitter bush. It's quite a herby smelling plant. Oh, I can hear a woodpecker. It's a cardinal woodpecker I can hear. It's krr, krr, krr sound. I'm not sure exactly where the elephants are. I know I got a report this morning that they were in one of the river lines, but yesterday they were not too far from this dune thicket where we are now. It'd be lovely if we had a bull elephant just strolling along here on top of that high area. That would be lovely. Okay, so we mentioned the sweet thorn. So we've got one actually right next to the vehicle over here. Now I want you to have a good look at those leaves. You can imagine if you were a leaf eater, even from here, these leaves look really good. Very, very sweet plant. And another thing that is very obvious is the thick white thorns over here. So when you look at a lot of the Vachellias, not all of them, but a lot of them, they've got very distinct white thorns. And it's definitely white for a reason. It wants the browsers, i.e. giraffe, to know that this plant is covered in thorns. It's very, very obvious. You can see these white thorns from a mile away. Very pretty thorns. Now, all of these thorns are quite thin, but sometimes we have done a few talks about them, that the thorns, some of them are swollen, that they are quite thick, almost as thick as my pinky. And it's very interesting what is happening there. And it's one of the symbiotic relationships, one of two symbiotic relationships that the tree has got with certain insects. Now, one of those insects is a wasp. And a wasp actually literally stings the thorn, pumps it up with protein, because the venom at the end of the day is protein, and that causes the thorn to grow, and therefore becomes a bit of a cavity in the middle of the thorn, and then the wasp is able to actually lay eggs in that cavity in the thorn. Now, not many animals actually consume the thorns. Elephants, of course, do. They've got no problem stripping the plant with the thorns and all. But then the other browsers like kudu and bushbuck, giraffe, they're very gentle and eating around the thorns. Now, I've seen it before where an elephant was actually eating on a sweet thorn, and it disturbed the wasps that were nesting on the tree. And the wasps literally stung the elephant, and the elephant took off, running off and trumpeting away.
On April 27th, Wild Earth will be celebrating a very special birthday. It's our Sweet 16. We want to celebrate you, our viewers who have been with us every step of the way.
I just appreciate you so much.
Send in your birthday wishes so we can include you in the celebrations.
Happy birthday, Wild Earth!
Video yourself saying happy birthday to Wild Earth with a short note and share them with us on Birthday at Wild Earth.
Now, there is a bar-throated apellis busy calling somewhere here. Let's look, look, look. Very pretty birds. They're quite small. A pale breast with this beautiful thin bar on the throat, called the bar-throated apellis. What you got there, Morgan? Okay, back to the landscape over here. I'm just going to scan with binoculars, see if there's no kudu walking around there. Greg, highlight for today would be calling the male cheetahs a female cheetah. That's I made that mistake twice now. I did it again. When was it the last time? About 2 weeks ago. Nadine was also the directing. She said, come on, that's not female cheetah, that's male cheetahs. It was an early morning. I made that mistake and my brain was still frosted up. And sometimes, you know, when you do what we do out here, you really need to think about what you're saying. Because sometimes the wrong thing comes out and you have to be careful. See the fork-tailed drongo there? Morgan, oh, it's probably going to fly, but it is quite stationary at the moment. Ah, these are wonderful little birds. Let's see if we can try and get it. That's called a fork-tailed drongo, masters of mimicry. And they can actually make sounds of sometimes small mammals and then also other birds. They're lovely. They're quite easily identified. Now you can identify a fork-tailed drongo. It's dark black with a clear fork in the tail over there. Okay, beautiful. There's just took in flight. I think it caught an insect over there. Don't forget about best bits. So if you're unable to watch the full experience, you are able to catch up on the best bits, and these are going to be highlights from all of the experiences on the app, and it's also the Escape to Nature experience. So you can always catch up on that. I'm not sure if some of you have been with us when we saw the meerkats. It was quite a splendid one for me. It's been a few years since I've seen meerkats properly on Amakhala Game Reserve. But one of the mammals that the fork-tailed drongo is actually able to mimic, to confuse, is the meerkats. They make the same sounds, the same alarm calls as what the meerkats do, and causes them to run away, especially if they've caught something like a scorpion. And they'll drop the scorpion and run away. Then the fork-tailed drongo, it's clever, goes down and just grabs it. Nadine, we haven't. Sorry, we just got a question from Nadine in the mission control. She's just wondering if we have seen the meerkats again. Maybe this evening we'll give it a bash. You have to choose your times very carefully when you want to hopefully get a sight of the meerkats. Early morning is the best when they wake up and sun themselves. And then also in the late afternoon when the sun is, starting to go down, the meerkats all go back home and then also want to make it nice and warm before they go back into their burrow. The rest, in between, they're foraging out in the bush, and it's difficult to understand where they are. Milo, you enjoyed your escape today. I'm so happy about that. Thanks for joining us. After all, we would not be doing this if it wasn't for all of you. So really, thank you very much for everything you've done, all the love and support over the years. And we will carry on doing what we're doing because we know all of you are very loyal to the Wild Earth team. So thanks again. Oh, there's what's that bird now? Southern boo-boo making a similar sound to an olive woodpecker. It's choo, 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 choo. I love that sound. One sound I've always wanted to get is the southern boo-boo making a sound that sounds very similar to when you're trying to start your car, but it just doesn't want to turn. It doesn't want to start. They make a very similar sound. And so we are heading towards the end of Escape to Nature now. I hope you all had a good time with us. It was lovely having you all on board and exploring Amakhala Game Reserve with you all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Don't forget that Sunset Safari will follow at about 2:30 on Central African time, and we will be out. So we'll see you then, and we will try and follow up on meerkats later on this afternoon when the sun is going down. All right, until then, you must all have a good day, and we'll see you in a short bit. Cheerio. Bye-bye.